My next guest grew up in small town America, Plattsmouth, Nebraska, to be exact. At the time, the population was 5,000, and diversity meant you had a redhead in your class. After graduating college, Tracy spent a year in Italy and then decided to return full-time in 2008. She didn't yet speak Italian. Today, she's going to share the differences in dating culture between the U.S. and Italy. And she's our resident expert because her and her partner have 2 beautiful kids together and one on the way. My childhood soccer teammate from Plattsmouth to Pistoia, Tracy O'Donnell. Ta-da! Can you hear me okay?
I sure can.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
Did I say Pistoia correctly?
Yes, you are.
Oh,
good. Perfect.
So start by explaining the cultural differences regionally in Italy, because when we in the United States think of Italy, we think of like everybody in Italy is the same.
Well, basically in the bigger cities, it probably is. Just like in America, big cities kind of have their own culture. You know, like Milan's probably really similar to New York, for example. These are both super big cities. So from Milan and Venice and Rome, places that most tourists go, you could probably get this idea that it's all kind of the same, but it's really not, because it's a long country, and so there's lots of differences from the north to the south. In the north, they're much more career-oriented. People are on time, things get done.
Is that because it's closer to Switzerland?
Yes, Germany, and then the farther as you get south, we're about in the middle, so I think I found a pretty good spot to stay. But the farther you go south, the further it just kind of gets to be a free-for-all, almost. Laws don't get followed. Taxes don't ever get paid. They don't keep up on things. They don't keep up on their hospitals. They don't keep up. They just kind of live it day by day, and it's totally different culture from the top to the bottom.
Yeah, which is very much like Florida.
Perfect.
Perfect example. And I can't speak to dating culture from top to bottom in Florida, but definitely like the overall culture is very different. So, but when you came from the Midwest to Italy, like immediately on the guy-girl dating scene, like what was something you noticed straight away that was different?
Maybe that the guys were very, very forward, very not, aggressive, but in like a passionate way. I mean, I was talking to another friend the other day about this, and she was saying, and a lot of them had said that they weren't the guys that they had come across with also weren't necessarily romantic. Like, I'm gonna sing for you underneath your window or something. But they were very enthusiastic and very passionate about, I can only think of the word in Italian right now. Conquistarti, to catch you, to grab you, to get you.
Yeah.
And so I agreed with that it's a passion and enthusiasm that they have.
Yeah, that I could see that as a very big difference, because in Midwestern, like my experience with guys in the Midwest, they were a little bit shy, mostly, and so that would probably be a big shock.
Yeah. And I didn't tell you this the other day, the first year I was here, I spent 2 months down in Sicily with a family, teaching their kid English, giving them the native tongue. And the guys I met down there were even more than the ones up here in the north. They were even more like, if we're going to be dating or if we're going to go out, why beat around the bush? Let's just go do it. Let's just kiss on the first date, or let's just, whatever, because if you want to do it later, why don't we just do it now, or like, they were much more enthusiastic.
I love your choice of words there, enthusiastic. I might call that aggressive, but yeah, Well, like in the US, we have stages or levels of dating, right? So we have like, uh, we're talking. Usually you meet on an app and then you talk forever and it's back and forth, and sometimes there's days in between when you talk with that person, and there's really no definition of that relationship. And then later you date or you hook up, and then you're exclusive, and then you're engaged, and then you're married, and then there's like levels. Did you find that there were levels in Italy of dating?
I thought there were, because I assumed there were, because I came from the same background as you, but came to know that it's more like it's a lot shorter, less steps, and once you find, like, you start, I mean, you talk with them, but then once you go out on a date and maybe hook up with them or whatever, that's it. That's kind of like the decision, and you're with that person. That's your boyfriend or that's your girlfriend. And that's something, yes, one of the big differences I came across with my partner, because I was thinking in the American manner and dating, and and he's like, what? This is we've been together, we've been together for 2 whole months, like what's going on? But the good thing is that he had a lot of patience, and he looked from my point of view and understood that I wasn't doing anything to him out of malice. I wasn't cheating on her. I wasn't trying to be, rude. I just was being my American self, and so he accepted that, and we went on from there.
Did you find that Italian guys are a lot more like possessive? Or jealous?
I guess the guys not. I heard more about the girls being that way.
I've heard that about the women as well. And so I assumed, from my research on YouTube, because that's how I learn these days, that just made me sound super grandma. That's how I learn these days. But you found that it was mostly the women, and that the men were more nonchalant?
Yes. Yes, that's exactly what I thought, because I know, I've been just hearing stories from friends now, even, different things like my partner, he wanted to go away for a couple of days with his friends, to Berlin. So that'd be great. A couple of days in the weekend. Good for you. I want to go too,
Yeah.
But the friends that he wanted to go with, in the end, they couldn't go because the wives or girlfriends wouldn't allow them to, quote unquote, allow them to. And they, they don't want to, to go somewhere without them, or they don't want them to be alone for 2 days. I don't know. I don't understand it still, but
So that's fascinating, because it immediately made me think of the mammoni, like the mama's boys. So it's I don't know, isn't that interesting that there's similar behavior of the mothers and then the girlfriends, and the girlfriends become mothers, and then they there might be, Dr. Phil might have a place to come to Italy. But for those who don't know, explain what mammoni are.
Okay, so it's the idea that the Italian boys are just taken care of and loved, and I mean, hopefully you're loved by your mom, but you're overdone, laundry done for you. You live in their house, they cook for you, they do everything for you, every little thing, like checking on your shirt, ironing everything, keeping everything, pretty much being your, I don't even know the word, but anyway, doing everything for you and not letting you go, and there's almost a morbid relationship between the thing. In fact, one of my friends was saying it was almost even too codependent, this relationship between him and his.
So your friend said it was a little creepy, the closeness of her boyfriend and his mother.
Yeah, and this other friend I had to tell you this little story because she now lives in America but she's married to an Italian that she brought back with her a couple of years ago. So I met her here. She's American. And her husband was talking the other day about calling himself a ragazzo, which is like a kid.
Oh.
And so he was just mentioning it, just saying like, you know, in a sentence, like, oh yeah, I'm just a ragazzo, I'm just a kid. And she was like, but you're 30, you know, or 32. He's like, yeah, but I was a man-child until my early 30s. And so she just then let that go. But I was like, that's a perfect example because, you know, you're living at home and having your mom do everything for you. It's exactly what you are, a man-child into your 30s. And then you find a wife and, you know, you hope, I guess, it continues from there. But
wow, that would be a lot to deal with. I don't know about all that. What were some of the other big differences that you experienced in the dating like norms that kind of caught you off guard?
Let's see. I guess. I mean, most of it was just the conception of it, the beginning of it, the trying to figure out when it starts, when your relationship starts, when it doesn't. Because I don't know, in America, it just seemed like there was always the talk. Like, we've been seeing each other. Do you want to be my girlfriend? You know, the note in the classroom, check yes or no, all that stuff. It's like, it just wasn't here. It was just kind of assumed. And so I was kind of lost at that point as far as that.
Yeah, that is major because you always have the talk, we're exclusive talk, or what are we, or yeah. Exactly,
yeah. And then you know, from then on, okay, you either choose that one person or you decide to, you know, say no and continue your dating with whoever you want to be with.
What about how the dates are themselves? Because from my single girlfriends, kind of what I've heard is, you know, because it's been a long time since I dated, and I never really dated a lot, but they're not like proper dates. You know, they're very vague. Like, we're hanging out, we're watching TV, we might go downtown and do something, but it's not like, may I take you on a date? Kind of a kind of a thing. And I think my idea of like European men in general is like, may I take, and Latin men, you know, I would like to take you on a date, miss. Is that true, or what does that look like?
I would say at the very beginning, it's kind of like you were describing in America, like you know, just more vague and meeting up at a pub or something, and spending time like that, or going to dance later. But yeah, I'd say once that you're kind of established, then you go out to dinner. Dinner is such a big thing, even with friends for birthdays. I mean, that's pretty much the outing you do, I'd say. I mean, the dinner is the event for the night. So I would say that that's something, yeah, you get a proper dinner and a proper evening planned which is kind of nice, you know.
Yeah, everything revolves around food.
Yes, it does. Can't deny that. But yeah, I mean, there are movies. We have the same kind of things. You know, we do the same kind of activities going, to movies or to the theater, or, you know, doing sporting events and stuff like that. So,
do they play games as much there? And I don't mean like Uno. I mean like, you know, oh, don't text him back for 2 days. You know, if you like him, don't be too eager. It definitely sounds like the guys are not playing any games, but like Americans, we have all these like rules where you go out on this date and you go and you tell your girlfriend all about the date, and she's like, well, you know, you can't do this and this and this, and if you do this, it means that.
Which I kind of always thought were kind of silly, which I probably followed them anyway, but I thought they were kind of silly. But yes, they don't. At least not in my experience. My experience was more of a, once we were established, it was like, I continued and I was like, okay, well, I just kind of did my own thing. Okay, good. I have this boyfriend, but I have my own stuff going on, and maybe I wouldn't call him for 3 days and he would be like, are we together? Like, are you not interested anymore? Or, I mean, did this thing break and I didn't know it? And I was like, what are you talking about? He's like, well, it's been 3 days and you haven't said anything. You haven't written me a text message. You haven't done anything, And I was like, oh, yeah, well, I've been thinking about you. I've been everything. He's like, gotta, communicate. So he is very much into communicating, which I think is one thing is with the Italian guys, I've had the experience of just a warmer kind of approach. A warmer approach and talking. I think communication is one thing that's lacking in the dating in America, or at least from my experience years ago.
Well,
you just don't talk about stuff as much, and he was very open and getting me to be more open. And
there may not everyone's very open about their feelings or even in touch with their feelings, or maybe a bit more guarded because of the games that we do play in the United States.
That could be.
So that's a really good point. Yeah.
And I wanted to do that since you were talking about the rules, and I can't call. It popped in my head right away, the Italian girls, and I was like, I think that probably as soon as they are with someone, then it's like, okay, you're not skipping any days. I'm going to write you in the morning, in the afternoon, and then the evening, and then the next day in the morning and afternoon.
Yeah.
So definitely no.
So the girl chatter after dates is very different looking probably in Italy than it is in the United States.
It's probably much longer, for sure.
Yeah. Do people stay friends with their exes after they break up there?
Some do. I think that's probably more or less like it is in America too. Depends on how the breakup ends up.
Yeah. What's the best thing about being with an Italian guy?
I love the difference, just that it's a different thing that I've ever known before. Growing up and besides the fact that it's middle school relationships or high school relationships, college relationships, but it's just so different than I've had before, and you're always surprised. This is kind of touching on one of the tips that I'll give you later.
Oh, okay.
It's my advice.
Yes.
But it kind of touches on it. But the fact that it's just always something new. There's always something new that you didn't expect, because you have your expectations of how your culture has, raised you to believe dating should be or how a relationship should be. But with somebody from another culture, you just never know. You'll have some strange little situation that comes up, and he sees it completely differently, and you're like, oh. And you wouldn't have known that unless you had asked him, or unless he brought it up, because you're so, focused on your expectations, and that's what's normal, that when it does come forward, it's usually a nice surprise, So I like those. That's
a cool perspective. Okay, I want to hear these tips that you have.
Okay. So I had to write them down, so I remember. And I asked Andrea last night, and he was just listing them off. So he
really?
Was more prepared than me. Yeah.
Aww.
He was just saying that you should always ask a lot of questions.
And these are tips for any cross-cultural relationship, or? Okay.
Yeah, it's not Italian specific. It's just things that we came across that have either helped or that we found were difficult, and how we got through them, I guess. So he just said ask lots of questions, and because when you don't understand something, is because you can't imagine it could possibly be like that, like I was just saying. So for your partner, maybe that's just the way it is, and so it's normal the way that they're acting. And to just be patient and maybe not get angry right away, and try to put yourself in their shoes. And then, then work it out a little bit. He says, and I totally agree. So to put everything clearly, just say everything clearly that you want. That way there's obvious from either side. Things that are obvious to me aren't going to be obvious to him.
Right.
So just always be clear about it, and don't, assume stuff. He said, always be curious. And I thought of you with your curious podcast. I was like, perfect. He said, always be curious. He goes, the more things that you are able to understand about the other person and the other person's culture is better. And it makes it easier to get along with them. and because you'll always know what they're expecting from you. Because without knowing those things, you don't even know where to turn, where to begin.
That's such a good point.
So that could include also talking to other people who have an experience with that culture, or just, having experience with another, having a relationship with someone in another culture.
Or getting on YouTube.
Exactly. Any way you can inform yourself is good. And be patient. Be patient's a good one. That's the advice.
Those are great pieces of advice. Yeah. I think, I kind of wonder with how COVID-19 will affect single people's dating habits right now. Will they be exploring some more video chat, long distance options just because we're all cooped up anyway? Who knows? So this could be very important for some people out there, for all the single ladies. Well, thank you oh, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna, that's all. Oh, one thing just a thought I had that we talked about the other day, but not today. We talked about like the macho Italian kind of guy.
Yeah.
If that was like a thing. And I figured out a difference, because I think that it's in both cultures, this like macho Italian, this macho American, like I'm the guy, but they're two different types. In America, I feel like it's a strong and silent type. Like strong and silent macho, I'm the guy kind of guy, and then instead of in Italian, it's like I'm the man, but let me show you how many ways I can love you. Very suave. You know what I mean? Like, but it's different. It's different, but they both kind of do that. So
that's a great way to articulate the differences. I love that. This has been so much fun. I'm so glad that you and Andrea are willing to be a part of this today. So this was so great. If you are watching on YouTube or listening and you want more episode updates and show notes, make sure you text REAL to 66866. And if you liked this episode, share it with a friend and share the love. So all across the world.
Yay! Yes, please do.
Thanks, girl.
Hopefully my Italian friends won't get angry with me about how I describe their culture. But.
No. I think you did great, and it was from your personal perspective, so it was perfect. Sure. All right, well, that's a wrap. Don't go anywhere because I want to take some photos before we leave, but that is all for today. You did great.